Welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, catering to the latest in ingredient trends, consumer insights, and food news. Brought to you by Corbion.
Hi, welcome to a Fresh Perspective, a podcast that is about everything food. I'm CJ.
And I'm Jenny.
And today we are going to talk more about fermentation. We've been talking about this for a couple of episodes now, or many times across the board, because everything amazing and delicious seems to be fermented.
Yes. It's so crazy to me that fermentation is in so many of those processes in the foods that I love, right? Alcohol,
Wine, beer, cheese.
Bread.
I actually didn't know that like salami was fermented until the last time.
What? I didn't know that about salami.
I thought Ricardo told us that.
Did he? Sure.
Maybe I've just lied.
I don't remember.
I think he did. And
I mean, I love salami and pepperoni and all the other things.
Me too. I mean, it sounds like everything fermented is basically the things that go on a charcuterie board or with the charcuterie board,
which is one of my favorite food groups.
Fantastic for me. So today we're going to continue that discussion. We are going to dive in a little bit more specifically into like the meat side of it and what it means for the meat industry and how fermentation kind of plays its role there. So maybe we should like dive in.
Let's do it. Who's our guest?
Yeah, so we have two guests today, actually. Amber Beckett. Amber is the product manager for preservation. And then we have Ashley Robertson, who is the senior manager of strategic marketing.
Hi, ladies.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, everyone.
What is your favorite fermented food?
I like so many different kinds of cheese that, narrowing it down. Let's go blue cheese.
Oh, I did not anticipate that even a little bit.
The stinkier, the better.
Yeah, Kathy's favorite was cheese too, like something about the crystals in the cheese that she really enjoyed.
We did talk about that. They kind of pop in your teeth. Yeah.
What about you, Ashley?
I feel like pizza as an entire food group, everything is fermented on that. Pepperoni, cheese, dough. I am getting down with that.
Neither one of you said beer or wine. Surprised.
It's too easy.
That is very easy. That's everybody's. We are excited to dive into fermentation and to start talking about everything it does and its magic in the meat world. And for us, I think you would just have to act like we are super new to fermentation and we don't know anything about it, which
is actually kind of true for me.
I was going to say it's going to be so hard, I'm sure.
Teach me.
But maybe we just take it back to the top. What is fermentation and what does it do in today's meat world and in the meat industry?
Yeah. So it's a broad question, right? Because fermentation means different things depending on the industry and the level of scientific rigor you're taking to the conversation. But I would say for the food and beverage industry, we would say fermentation is just a process by which you use microorganisms to impart a favorable change to a food or beverage. So you think of microbes consuming either sugar or starches in the food, and they'll turn it into other molecules. So you could get lactic acid production, you could get carbon dioxide, you could get alcohol. And a side effect of that is that a lot of those byproducts end up preserving the food. So we can use fermentation as a means of extending the shelf life and preventing food safety issues in meat, as an example.
So how does that work with meat then? Like, do we use specific types of microbes? And then how does the fermentation actually preserve the meat? Because to me, that would almost sound like spoilage. Like, I mean, I know it's not, but.
So that's why I said favorable change. Spoilage.
Favorable.
But in general, yeah, there's an enormous variety of fermentation parameters. So parameter would be the atmosphere, the starting material. So what kind of meat do you start with? And then like you called out, what kind of microorganism do you use? Is it a pure culture or is it a variety of cultures? And so that starts to kind of define the characteristic changes you get. But like I said, the organic acids, the bacteriosins that are produced through fermentation end up extending the shelf life because they inhibit the growth of the spoilage microorganisms that you would call, they cause the meat to rot.
So when you look at the lactofermentation process or something like when you're like of pickles versus what we do, how are those the same? Like, are we doing the same thing or is it different? Like what is the connection between the two?
Yeah, so I would say it's the same in that it's this natural process. You start with microorganisms that consume something and turn it into something else. But the difference is when we do it, it's at a much larger scale. And because Corbion has over 80 plus years of fermentation expertise, we have the parameters really well defined. We know what kind of atmospheric conditions are required to produce the desired changes. We have the exact starter cultures defined. And so there's less variability in the output is the major difference.
Amber, can you speak to anything around like the hurdle technology and the specific parameters that we're trying to make sure that we're building hurdles against?
Yeah, so if you look at food and if you take meat as an example, if we're thinking through food safety or spoilage, how do we inhibit those microorganisms? You don't just say, well, we're just going to do this one thing. There's different categories of actions you can take, and those categories combine to protect the food. So for example, pH. You could lower the pH of the meat, and that tends to make it a bit more difficult for microorganisms to grow. Another hurdle would be temperature. So we do things like refrigerate the meat in order to extend that shelf life. Those two things alone aren't necessarily sufficient to protect the meat though, right? You can have spoilage microorganisms that grow in the refrigerator or at acidic pHs. And so then you can look towards modulating other hurdles, and that really combined will extend your shelf life along with a natural preservative.
Tell me a little bit about how the taste, how that works with taste, because when you take grapes and you ferment them and they taste like wine, that's not the same taste as grapes, right?
Exactly what I was going to go for too.
So I wanted
or pickles, that changes it from a cucumber to a pickle, which is a major flavor shift.
Because cucumbers are gross and pickles are delicious. And so
agreed, that is the correct analysis there.
Yes. So talk to me about like how do we put that in a steak? Like does steak that doesn't have any, or meat, doesn't have to be steak, I just really like steak. But if meat doesn't have the, does it taste different without the stuff in it to preserve it?
Yeah, it'll taste like a cucumber. No. So
gross.
A lot matters with the starting material. We think of fermentation, it's kind of similar to roasting, in that you can break down these very large flavor molecules that aren't actually that active because they're too big. And when you start fracturing, you get more volatile flavor active components. And so if you're aware of what they are in the starting material, you tend to get the same types of changes. So all wine kind of has this, I call it umami flavor. I don't know if that's accurate. Versus something like a steak, it's not going to get that characteristic grape flavor compounds. So just knowing what your starting material is and what the desired changes are, you can adjust the parameters, you can adjust the starting microbial culture to control all of those things.
So the fermentation process doesn't have to change the flavor.
Yeah, so if you don't want flavor changes, which a lot of natural food preservation, you don't necessarily want to change the overall flavor character. You would generally try to minimize that. You're aware of what compounds cause the flavor changes, and you can try to minimize the production. Or you could choose ferments that tend to kind of go along with the matrix that you're trying to protect. And there's a lot you can do there.
I think you can also use, some of the products to enhance the flavors, whether they're more meaty or umami, like Amber was saying, and use the fermentation process to your advantage to really bring out some of the more savory notes of some of the products.
Yeah, so that actually kind of ties into this trend of sodium reduction, where salt tends to play a similar role in food of kind of contributing savory notes. And as today's consumers are looking to reduce salt content, you can sometimes swap out some of the salt for a ferment and get your overall sodium decreased while still preserving those savory notes in the food.
So like when I get those chicken breasts that are all big and fat, and then I cook them and they're like half the size and there's holes in them, like I'm pretty sure that's when they put like saline like solution in them, like salty water. So I need to look for stuff that doesn't have that. It always makes me really mad. It's like, okay.
I have never even noticed that.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Oh, my mother taught me to soak chicken in salt water before you cook it. And when you do that, it like kind of all leaks out. And when you pull it out of that, you can see the holes from where they were punctured.
My mother taught me nothing about cooking chicken other than when you think it's done, cook it for like 20 more minutes. It should feel like a hockey puck. General theme.
So I need to hear about umami really quickly because I don't know how to spell it. And in my head, it's like, ooh, mommy, that's delicious. But I know that's not really what it is. So I need to hear what that means and how to spell it.
Yeah, okay, so spell it. I'm not going to Google it, so I might get this wrong. Umami, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Amber. But I didn't win spelling competitions.
I was going to say, no, I come from the
and it doesn't mean
we
like
spell check and we rely on that heavily.
Yeah. So what does it mean exactly?
So it's a very broad topic. We tend to think of it as savory. So, if you consume soup and it's got this chicken salty flavor, or a tomato, it's just this really savory subset of flavor profiles. And fermentation, I'm not an expert on the sensory part of this, but I know that the taste receptors in your mouth that have been tied to umami flavor, they tend to pick up nucleotides, which is a component of DNA, as well as glutamates, which is a subset of amino acids. And fermentation can contribute both of these in certain instances.
I just heard like 3 words in there that I already didn't know. And I was like, more Googling for me.
Jenny, you can also describe it as kind of like more mushroomy, right? It's like a mushroom broth is how I would.
I love mushrooms.
But you may like it even if you don't like mushrooms.
We are joined by Amber Beckett and Ashley Robertson, who are talking to us about fermentation and everything that it does in the meat world. And we have been diving in to kind of some of the functionality of it and flavors and antimicrobial control. But right now we're going to take a break so that we can hop into one of our favorite segments, which I don't think either of you have played yet. Eat, Save, Give.
Now it's time for Eat, Save, Give, a thoughtful peek into the hearts, minds, and taste palates of our guests.
Eat, Save, Give. So this is our favorite, or one of our favorite segments in the show, where we will give you a couple of different food items and you will have to decide if you are going to eat it now, if you are going to save it for later, or if you are going to give it away and let somebody else eat it. Today, we have fully loaded charcuterie board, cheese, meat, nuts, wine, fruit, crackers, anything that your heart desires, holiday honey ham, or chorizo street tacos. Eat, save, give. Amber, what are you going to do?
Okay, this is easy. First, I'm going to eat the charcuterie board because that, comes with wine and it just all is delicious. I'm going to give the holiday ham because, it's such a nice gesture to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. I'm thinking of your family. That's definitely the kindest option. And I'm going to save the tacos. It's not really a logical choice because they're probably going to get soggy, but well, what are you going to do?
I mean, you went the nice route with the holiday ham.
She's the kindest guest we've ever had. The rest of them are like, take this because I hate it. It's disgusting.
That's exactly what I was going to do. Okay, Ashley, what about you?
I'm going to eat the charcuterie board for sure. That's delicious. I need it in my stomach now. I'm going to save the holiday ham for Easter for myself. Ooh. Amber, you were very nice to give it away, but I'm going to save it for my family. And then I will give away the chorizo street tacos.
Can never give away taco.
They're delicious, but charcuterie board, street taco.
True. Very true.
I feel like this is really easy.
Jenny, what about you?
I'm also eating the charcuterie board. I must be pronouncing it wrong because I feel like I'm missing the boat here, but whatever. It has wine and meat and cheese, and that's all my favorite stuff.
Grown-up Lunchable.
Yeah, it really is. And it feels so fancy when you eat it. And then I'm going to, I guess I'll save the ham. Not a big fan of ham, but whatever. Because I really don't like chorizo, so I'm giving those away.
I am going to also keep the charcuterie. That was easy for all of us, I guess. We're all into charcuterie. I can't with ham. Like, I'm a hard pass on the ham. Like, no form of ham am I going to partake in. And nope, maybe if it's on the charcuterie board and you didn't tell me that was ham. I think it's like a childhood trauma or something. And now I'll eat this, I'm eating the charcuterie board now. Maybe I'll save the charcuterie board for later. It seems like it would save, I'm not sure that tacos would save that long. I'll eat those now. And I'm giving away.
Sprinkle some preservation on the tacos and then ferment
We're
them.
worried about
And
like
then,
the tortilla getting like soggy, you know, when you go to taco and like it's just like crumbles in your hands and you're like,
gross.
That was crystal clear, I know, but that's my choices. So hopefully you learned something about each other as you move forward into the rest of the week. You can judge everyone on their choices of charcuterie boards and how they say it.
Yes, we learned that Amber is kind, and that if we want something to eat, we should ask her to give it to us later.
Yes. We are going to hop back into the discussion. We are joined by Amber Beckett and Ashley Robertson, and we are talking about fermentation and the magical benefits of it. And we talked a little bit about flavor, and I know you mentioned some of the other functionalities, but can you maybe talk through so we've got flavor and antimicrobial control. What are the other functional benefits that come out of ferments and the fermentation process in the meat world?
Yeah, so in the meat world, we typically think of something called cook yield improvement. And that's just if you look at meat before and after cooking, what's the weight is a kind of a simplistic way of explaining it. And ferments can actually increase your cook yield. So that's another pretty big advantage for the meat industry when looking at ferments.
How does it increase it?
So they have humectant properties.
Oh.
Jenny's eyes.
What? Like, how could you make my steak bigger by putting some...
It wouldn't make it bigger per se. It would just prevent it from getting as small.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's around waste reduction as well, right?
That's so fascinating to me. I can't even imagine that cook weight can be changed by something like that.
There's so many advantages of fermentation and microbial growth.
Amber, can you talk about how, and I'm asking you to talk about it because you're incredibly scientific. Can you talk about how the water activity, like how we can impact water activity to help impact the yield of the finished product?
Yeah, and also water activity is an important microbial hurdle. So tying back into what we touched on earlier, you can add ferments to kind of decrease that water activity and increase the hurdle to microbial growth. So this is another way that we specifically can target spoilage organisms and extend the shelf life even a little bit further.
But what's water activity?
Think of like the available water in a matrix. So if I'm in this room and everyone has a glass of water except me, my kind of water activity is low because I don't have water. Yes, there's water in the room, but other people have claimed it already. If I have 10 glasses of water in front of me, I have a lot. I would say my water activity is high. That's a non-scientific description.
Thank you. I need it.
That's the Jenny and CJ way of explaining it.
So if I have those 10 glasses of water in front of me and I'm a microbe, I'm in a good situation for growth.
So when you look at fermentation over the years, so we know it's like an ancient process that I'm not even going to pick a date because I'm really bad at history and I don't know like when Egyptians or whoever did this were around. Yeah, but it was like a really long time ago. And we look at it now. How has it changed over the years, or is it literally still harnessing just that natural power?
So the core of it really hasn't changed. It's still harnessing this really natural process. And it's just we've kind of expanded our understanding of it. So how do we use it? When do we use it? And then again, the process optimization. It is incredibly complicated. There's billions and billions of microorganisms that you could use. So figuring out which species is going to give you your desired impact is important. And then understanding, well, what do you need to feed them in order to get that desired impact? And then what is the, atmosphere? Is it oxygenated? Is it totally non-oxygenated? In that type of thinking.
And when you look, so we see a lot about it in, trend articles, food articles, basically everywhere. What about the ferments that we make, do you think, or what do consumers love about it, and how do we help support that?
Yeah, I think if you look at what the end consumer is thinking of fermentation, like you said, it is very trendy right now. There's reported health benefits, for example, of consuming microbes in the form of probiotics. And then there's also the prebiotic aspect of it as well. I think that what really connects with consumers is just, like we said, that natural historic process. Consumers really are demanding more clean labels, so they don't want to see sodium benzoate as much on a label. And if you can replace that with the more clean label ferment, that is going to connect and resonate with a large subset of consumers. And then for the separate functionality of flavor, it is a really trendy flavor right now. That tang, that characteristic umami that we discussed, that's it's trending, and there's all sorts of ways to use that in different food and beverages.
I love that the flavor is trending.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's so interesting, right? Like, oh, everybody wants umami, and we can use fermentation.
Like, I love sourdough. I love basically, except for,
so good.
I don't know if olives are fermented, but I don't mess with those. But
I love olives.
Well, it's like with pickles, they could be fermented or they could be just
pickled. Yeah. Well, I know that we're getting ready to, we're approaching the end, but one thing I wanted to talk about was, I know that there are a lot of synthetic solutions that perform some of these functions. Yeah. How do the ferments or these natural solutions compare when you're looking at synthetic solutions? And I'm sure it's different depending on the functionality you're trying to get to. Are they equally as effective?
Yeah, a lot is going to depend on the specific matrix, the problem, the desired shelf life. But we really can replace synthetics on the label and still get the desired functionality. And that's a lot of what we've really built our expertise on, is partnering with our customers to get where they need to go.
That's fantastic. Before we start to wrap it up, any final thoughts or anything else you want to add?
I would like to be a taste tester for the fermentation meat process. Like, and then I can say really smart things like, the cook weight of this is very high and it's got so much umami, and
it tastes like it has better yield.
We can train for that.
First of all, we'll get you on the list. And second of all, my go-to smart thing to say is always multi-dimensional flavor profile.
Ooh, okay. I love that. I'm so going to use that.
It's like all these different end products. And so the flavor profile is multi-dimensional as opposed to a unidimensional flavor profile.
Oh.
This is reminding me of like the wine sommeliers where they pick out like the most unique, like, this tastes like fresh grass clippings. I'm getting
next to a wooded brook.
Yeah.
And I'm getting hints of great
wet forest floor.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. It is always super enlightening and educational. I'm always like, every time we get to the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn in life.
I know. And I've learned so much today in 24 minutes. It's a miracle. I love it. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys. And if you guys are looking for more information on the magic of fermentation, what it does in the meat world, and to all of the different meats and the different functionalities it has, you can head on over to
the multi-dimensional flavor profile.
That too. Right? I don't even think I can say that.
I'm committing it to memory.
But you can head on over to thecorbioncut.com. You can sign up to receive our newsletter or subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure you stay up to date on all the new podcasts and when they come up. Thank you guys for joining us, and I'm going to go get some more coffee.
Don't forget, keep creating.